Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here once again with another video on The Flash Season 5. So the talk of the Flash community, and I guess just the Arrowverse community in general over the past week and a bit, has of course been about the massive news. The fact that Bebo will be returning to Legends of Tomorrow later on this season, which is of course just, wow, like I'm amazed and I'm just so hyped. And then I guess the other thing that has, been talked about a little bit, I guess, that is sort of worth talking about again, is that of the white suited, the gold trimmed, the gold eyed and non-gold standard villain coming to the show later on this season in episode 18, in an episode actually named after himself, so what a smug asshole, that being of course Godspeed. So I have held off talking about Godspeed since those initial reveal discussions, as I didn't want to flood you guys with videos on him, when all we really have, is a few set photos with him on wires. Like, it's not even him on the ground. So there were actually talks going around that the CW and Warner Brothers were going to release an official promo image of the character, but I think that was if the response was negative, like the Season 5 suit leak was, which, led them to, reveal a proper official look, which even then didn't, really appease fans too much. But as most of you would know, the online reaction to the Godspeed suit was, highly positive. Like, really the only negative things being said were about the character himself coming to the show because of the, maybe him not being the best character. It wasn't about the actual look of the suit, because as I said, and as most people seem to agree with it, it's easily one of the most accurate suits on the shows, like in regards to the suit from the comics. Really only competing with maybe Wild Dog from Arrow, like the one he wore in Season 5, as well as this season, as well as Accelerated Man, which, even mentioning that, that character gets me mad, as I didn't really utilize that character more. Anyway. So yeah, they would have only released an official look at Godspeed, I think, if the response wasn't great to the whole Godspeed suit from set, but yeah, as we know, so good reactions, no damage control needed. But as I've said, we are running off limited information on Godspeed and how he will be portrayed on the show. We know what he looks like, we know that he will be the focus of his episode, and we know he kills a female speedster named Leah in 2049. That's it, really. But what we're going to talk about in this video isn't really what will go down in his episode specifically, because as I said, we don't really know enough. But we will instead be, talking about what the character could potentially be and how he could also connect to a future character that we had teased to us earlier on in the season. And even though I shouldn't have to say this, saying I've basically said this without actually saying it, this is just a thought or theory of mine, or just what I think would be a cool story to use with the character. Now, I did mention this briefly on one of my live streams, in the past week or so. Some of you may have been there, not too sure. And for the ones that were there, the response to my summary of the theory was extremely positive. But as always, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Whether you love it, you hate it, or you would change the parts of it around to make it a bit better. Let me know your critical thoughts down there in the comments. But yeah, let's just get into it. So most speedsters have a specific ability that is unique to them. So with Godspeed's, in the comics, it is that he can actually create a sort of like a clone of himself by dividing the speed force within him. So this clone can just do whatever, it's a clone. Now this is a pretty overpowered ability. Being able to be in two places at once, it's a pretty big advantage, and was useful in the early parts of his story when he was still trying to, parade around as this good guy. The original can be parading around as the good guy, and the clone can be going around being the evil and intimidating Godspeed. Now, while using this is useful, using it for a decent period of time would actually start to hurt Godspeed. Seeing it's an ability, doing anything for a long period of time that requires, using muscles and all of that, it's going to get tiring after a while, and you are going to have to stop. So when this happens with Godspeed, the Speed Force power would just return to him back from his clone. Like the clone would sort of just disappear, I guess, just break down and just would go back to Godspeed. Now, some of you might already be thinking hold on, isn't that similar to what Reverse Flash or even Zoom could do on the show? And yeah, those two other evil speedsters did stuff that gave off two versions of them. With Reverse Flash, that was a speed mirage, which is basically just a holograph, that's probably the best word to use, of the speedster, which is caused by moving so fast that you create an after image. And with Zoom, that was a time remnant, which is just basically a version of yourself in a few seconds in the future, which ends up basically just being the same version of you, but not connected like Godspeed's is to his clone. So there are some similarities on face value, but decent size differences when you actually look into it a bit. But out of these two, the most similar is probably the time remnant. Now with this clone, it would be pretty cool if at the start, he is just a clone of Godspeed, doing whatever he needs to do. But over time, even if it is just episode by episode, we see that clone do more violent things compared to what the original version of Godspeed would do. Sure, Godspeed's a killer, but this clone could kill weaker or just random people compared to the people that Godspeed would normally kill, the ones he, seeks more power off or something like that. So this clone over time is this like more darker or evil side. And over time, especially if Godspeed is taking, speed from other speedsters or just gaining power from another source, we could see his power levels increase, which would in turn, possibly increase the power of the clone. And then maybe we see that clone become corrupted by the power or just that darker side or a certain event. And even though it's a bit of a stretch, the Godspeed clone could, eventually become its own entity and separate, not having to return to the original Godspeed. And over time, this broken off, corrupted clone could become the speedster that has already been teased this season, that being Red Death. Having this broken and corrupted clone of Godspeed being Red Death could lead, him to being this ultra threat and menace to Central City, raking up a, kill amount worthy of being referenced by Captain Singh earlier on this season when they were talking about Cicada in the future. Who knows, this Red Death character could actually kill its original host, if you want to call it, that being Godspeed. Gain some extra power, remove some of the competition. This could explain maybe why he isn't mentioned by Captain Singh in the museum. And yes, I know we will be meeting Godspeed in the year 2049, but let's just assume and just let this theory work out a bit better and just assume he travels back in time for future use of the character. Maybe he goes back in time, to a time that was thriving with more speedsters. Maybe 2049 isn't thriving. Because if Godspeed travels back to, this past, he might only be here for a certain amount of time where maybe Central City doesn't learn about Godspeed too much, or he's just seen as like an amateur speedster that was killed off by this much more deadlier and advanced speedster in the form of Red Death. And that's maybe why he isn't mentioned in the museum. It's like, oh, Godspeed, he was a bit of a noob. He only killed like 2 people. This Red Death mate, he killed like 30 times more people than him. What a rookie Godspeed was. Why would waste space and time with him in the Flash Museum? Why bother? Now, as we should all know by now, Red Death in the comics is a combination of Bruce Wayne or Batman and Barry Allen or the Flash due to an incident. But come on, the show was never going to do this. Even the most optimistic and positive person on the shows and all this should have realized by now that they were never going to do that and we were never going to have that on screen. So this theory and just this, I guess this premise just seems like an interesting way in which to use Godspeed for a decent amount of time in a still villainous way that people, or at least the majority of people, want to see him used on the show, but also sort of making him like a loser fairly early on into this whole series of events, which would, make people that don't really like the character a bit happy. But throughout all this, Godspeed would still be relevant, seeing it is his more evil clone going around as this Red Death killer speedster, because if Red Death isn't the whole Batman and Flash amalgamation, who's the character going to be? Are they going to randomly make Iris Red Death? Are they going to randomly make Joe Red Death or something like that? Or Eddie Red Death? If they make it this whole clone of Godspeed, I think it just works a bit better. They don't have to attach a name to it because we already know the backstory of all of it. With Godspeed, I would expect him to be around for at least half the season. And that is just due to that suit, which I know for a fact would have cost a decent amount of money to make. They're not going to waste that on just a few episodes. They need to make that suit, worth it. If you're going to put money on it, make it, at least last 5 or 6 episodes on screen at the minimum. But yeah, overall, I think this would be a decent story and would incorporate 2 characters that many have wanted to see on the show. And while not maybe doing justice to Godspeed, if you really, 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 really love the character, you're still using the character in a fairly mainstream way that won't be disappointing to people that still like him, but you still might not be completely satisfied if you love the character, but I don't know why you would love him. Now, some of the other options that have been talked about have been that of Godspeed being Nora's twin brother, or just her brother in general, Godspeed being Nora's former partner in the future turned evil, even Captain Singh being Godspeed was thrown around, which I think is a meme level option. No offense to anyone who picked that one, but it's a bit silly. I even saw a theory for Eobard Thawne actually being Godspeed. There are a few options and theories out there, or maybe I should say many. I don't know. We'll say a few. Obviously, some are a bit stronger than others, but let me know any more ones you might have. Sort of interested to see how wacky they can get. As I said, the meme level top tier one at the moment is definitely Captain Singh being Godspeed, because I think that's really silly. But Anyway, but thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think of this setup? Do you think this sounds good for the show? Do you think it sounds terrible? Or do you think it sounds like pretty good, but you changed some things here and there? Let me know your critical thoughts in the comment section down below. You know I love hearing them. And yeah, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.